Last night, to bring you up to speed, if you're just tuning in, and can't well since you weren't here, the ISIS videos, not the beheading videos. We've talked about those in the past. There's a new series of videos coming out from the people claiming to be ISIS. And we don't know who's making them really. Maybe it's the CIA. I don't know. But I think the content's very interesting. They have one of their prisoners, John Cantlie. He is, and it's actually spelled Can't Lie, Cantlie, which is an interesting name for someone who's reading propaganda, because that's essentially what he does. He sits there. He's at a table. There's a black background. He's
chopping down cherry trees and.
No, he just sits there at the table. Oh, that's a Lincoln joke. So he's
pretty sure that's Washington.
Oh, Lincoln didn't chop down the cherry tree? I thought Lincoln chopped down some kind of cherry.
No, it was George Washington, and he didn't actually do it. It was completely made up. It's just a story where it's like, Father, I cannot tell a lie.
It sold some books. So I graduated from the dumb school in my county, which is the county north of Ian's county. We grew up in the same area. And, I went to the adult school program for the bad kids. Ian spent the whole time, his whole public school career at the genius school. He doesn't know anything. He knows nothing.
Wasn't there some kind of thing about Abraham Lincoln about that?
No.
This is entirely a George Washington fable. And I mean, I was, in honors classes at one point, and then I was like, screw this, and, stopped going to school and got kicked out, or I dropped out, actually. And I know this story. So
smart move.
Thank you, public schooling.
He just sits there at a table and talks.
Pretty sure I got that from Schoolhouse Rock or something.
Directly into
I think I learned more from Schoolhouse Rock than I did from 13 years of education.
So John Cantlie is the spokesman now for ISIS. He sits and delivers a pre-written message from a teleprompter directly into a camera. There's a black background. He's sitting there with his orange prisoner shirt on, and that's the content of these videos. We played the first of those videos. Actually, technically, there have been 3 so far. The first one was just like an introduction where he talks about himself a little bit and, why it is that he's doing this, that he's been abandoned by the United Kingdom government. He's a former photojournalist who was abducted somewhere, I forget where in the Middle East, but he's been in custody of ISIS allegedly since 2012. And so the first one was just like an intro video saying, hey, we're going to put out this series of videos. And the series has begun. They are now up to video 2 and 3. We played video 2 last night, the audio track of it, and I have the third video here tonight, which just came out a couple of days ago. It's called. The series is called "Lend Me Your Ears." And we don't know how many videos will be coming out with this guy hosting them. And I think they're interesting because they give you another perspective. Now, there's 3 sides to every story, side A, side B, and then there's the truth. So I don't know what the truth is. I'm not claiming that this is the truth, but it's somebody else's perspective on things that's not the mainstream media in America, that's not the government of the United States or the United Kingdom. And so from that perspective, it's interesting to hear what John Cantlie has to say.
Now, are we under the impression that these are John Cantlie's words and thoughts, or that he's reading these?
He's definitely reading a script.
But did you hear the sort of colloquial intonations that went into his speech that we listened to last night?
Give me an example of that.
I can't give you an example because I listened to it last night and I didn't listen to it a moment ago. But the way it was written by an English speaker. It was written by somebody who speaks English very well.
Yep.
Because the acid test of any language is to be able to understand colloquial expressions and apply them properly. If you can do that, you can do crosswords. You're fluent. It's a language you're facile with. I kind of feel like that was like he was editing at the very least.
You mean Cantlie was editing? You think Cantlie was editing the copy that he was reading?
I think so.
Either that, I mean, I think the James Foley video that they had put out, the guy speaking on it was a guy with a British accent.
Yes.
He was the one who was allegedly doing the beheading. So, I mean, apparently, it would seem if these things are what we're told that they are, then it would appear that they have some native English speakers amongst them.
That's not uncommon, to find English as a relatively well-spoken language around the world. I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, the guy that the speaker of English. Just because you can speak English and just because you have an English accent doesn't mean that you can apply colloquial terms that well. These tend to be regional. They tend to they tend to exclude people. This guy, from the looks of him, grew up in a family of Middle Easterners that was living in London.
This guy meaning
the guy we're talking
John
about.
Cantley?
No, not John Cantley.
The alleged beheader?
The alleged beheader looked like
Jihadi John or whatever they're calling him.
Okay, Jihadi
like
John looked like a guy that grew up in a house of people that were from the Middle East that had moved to London for some period of time. Yeah, he had an English accent, but he still, I don't know. I mean, is he going to be able to do this? I was just impressed by the script and its ease with the language.
Okay. That under consideration. We're going to play for you the second of the series of actual propaganda videos, allegedly from ISIS, hosted by John Cantley, and we'll begin that now. We'll comment and pause throughout this. I know you're welcome to comment with your thoughts as well at 855-450 free. Again, this one just released about 2 or 3 days ago at this point. Here he is.
Hello, I'm John Cantley, the British citizen abandoned by my government and a long-term prisoner of the Islamic State. President Obama's address on the 13th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks finally stopped all the ninnying around and laid down his 4-stage strategy for confronting the Islamic State. There were no big surprises. US aircraft will provide the air power, while a mix of Iraqi army, Iraqi National Guard, not yet formed, Peshmerga fighters and Iranians, not mentioned, will do the ground operations. The border between Iraq...
That's interesting.
Do you hear the way he says this? These Peshmerga fighters, not mentioned. I mean...
Ninnying around, I heard him say, it sounded like.
He adds it on to the end of the sentence in a way that somebody who writes would do. This isn't...
It's well written. There's no doubt about it. I don't think that means John Cantley was the one doing the writing. I mean, that's a jump to a conclusion.
They have a journalist on site, and you don't think it was the journalist doing the well-written writing.
Well, they haven't cut his head off yet, so maybe he is adding some value to the operation.
Do we know anything about John Cantley's politics before he winds up in this place? I mean, maybe he's a genuinely anti-war guy who's like, yeah, this is ridiculous, and now I'm going to die because of it. I mean, that potential exists.
That's what I'm kind of thinking. To some extent, these people, they're experiencing Stockholm Syndrome. That's why I wonder about all these videos. This is a fantasy. This is a conspiracy theory. But let's say for a second, both of the three of these guys that have had their heads cut off are like, hey, look, we can cut your head off, or you can play along with us. Which would you want to do? And they're like, I'll play along.
I don't know about somebody who's being coerced into writing something, producing something worth. Like, I don't know that somebody's coerced into writing something is writing something well written. I can't imagine that somebody puts a gun to my head and tells me to write an article and I come out with something fantastic. Yeah. I can't picture that.
Yeah, you'd almost try to do badly.
Yeah.
Well, what I thought was interesting was I didn't watch Obama's speech, but he's saying that they're going to be using Iranian troops, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's the first time hearing of that, and I did watch the speech. So
yeah, well, as he's saying, Obama didn't mention that. Yeah. They're the ones who are informing us of that, making that claim, which of course would be ironic, considering that Iran was supposed to be the axis of evil, right? Well, now apparently the axis of evil is completely okay if they're going to team up with them to go after ISIS. There's more coming up at 8:55. 450 free. We'll continue. More with John Cantley. He is, it's another about 5.5 minute video here. We're about a minute into it thus far. He's talking about Barack Obama's statement a couple of weeks ago about how he's so tough and he's going to go and, stop ISIS, what his plan was. And so ISIS here, or the folks claiming to be ISIS, are releasing a series of videos giving their side of the story through one of their prisoners, John Cantley, former photojournalist from the UK, as he continues his narration.
Peshmerga fighters and Iranians, not mentioned, will do the ground operations. The border between Iraq and Syria will be open and Syrian rebels will be armed. And all of this with only 475 extra US advisory personnel doing the job. And not a single US combat soldier with his boot on the ground. We will lead a broad coalition to roll back the Islamic State, said Obama. We're hitting ground targets while Iraqi forces go on the offense. I will not hesitate to take action against the Islamic State in Syria, he said. Now, when exactly Gulf War III will start and how long it will take isn't covered. US advisors working with the Iraqi army have described their performance as consistently grim, while arming and training an effective National Guard of supposed Sunni fighters in western Iraq will take months to achieve. The Free Syrian Army are proven to be an undisciplined, corrupt...
Wait a second. Did he say arming Sunni fighters in western Iraq?
I can jump it back. I think he might have.
Why would Sunnis be fighting the Islamic State?
Aren't they Shiite? Is that
no, they're Sunni. I'm certain of that.
Let me jump it back here. Hang on.
In western Iraq will take months. Describe their performance as consistently grim, while arming and training an effective National Guard of supposed Sunni fighters in western Iraq will take months to achieve.
Okay.
The Free Syrian Army are proven to be an undisciplined, corrupt, and largely ineffective fighting force. As recently as September the 7th, a senior US intelligence official said, "Our intelligence assessment has no serious consideration to work with the FSA. Giving the FSA $500 million now is a completely pointless exercise. Never mind the fact that the FSA sells the weapons the West gives them to arms dealers and smugglers."
Wah, wah, wah. Is anybody surprised by that one?
No, not in the slightest bit.
No.
And I just Googled it, and apparently the Islamic State is a Sunni thing. So I guess they're trying to train Sunnis to fight Sunnis.
Right. So they're going
to
take
make it not as like sectarian is the idea.
They're going to take a vilified underclass, the Sunni, in Iraq, because Iraq is a Shiite. The United States came in, turned it from Sunni to Shiite, and they're going to take this vilified underclass, and they're going to say, "Come on, guys, fight with us against your people who believe like you."
He did say supposedly.
He did say that.
Continue.
And much of it then ends up with the Islamic State.
And this is the thing, like we've seen, they were talking about this, and I think I said it on the show when they were talking about arming moderate Syrian rebels, and I'm like, tell me more about these moderates who are violently overthrowing their government. And yes, ISIS is partly born out of these factions that were fighting the Syrian government, and we've already seen them with like rocket launchers made in America that were shipped to them by the U.S. government.
Well, because the Shiites dropped their stuff and ran away, now the United States is bombing its own Humvees that are being driven by Sunnis.
And I was looking for a video that Adam had played on his show, Adam Kokesh, that there was a video, it was like a half hour long of this guy just like showing you around ISIS, and he's like, it's like a tour, he's like, here we are at the Syrian-Iraq border, and he's just walking back and forth. And at one point he says to the camera, he's like, "Obama, please send more corporate U.S. money." Like he was just showing like all this American equipment that they had, and he thought it was so great. And he's like, "Yes, please send more of it. We really appreciate it."
Continuing on here.
Air power is good at taking out specific targets, but it is not much use at taking and holding ground. For that, you need effective, disciplined troops. And it's hard to see how this hodgepodge army with a long history of underperforming is going to be any form of credible infantry. After the speech, Peter Baker of the New York Times observed that Obama is plunging the United States into one of the bloodiest, most vicious conflicts now in existence. He will pass his successor a volatile and incomplete war, much as his predecessor left one for him. Mr. Baker goes on to comment that while previous presidents enjoyed a surge of public support when they took the nation to war, the public is not rallying behind Obama this time around.
Thank goodness.
Polls indicate that while the American public support military action against the Islamic State, they do not think that Obama is the man for the job. Which goes a long way.
Which isn't going to do really great for whoever the Democrat nominee is, Mrs. Clinton.
That's speculative, but we'll find out more.
I don't think it's going to do well for whoever ends up in that seat, because then they'll just be like, "Hey, I inherited this mess," just like Obama said at the beginning of his first and second term, like, "Hey, I inherited this mess."
So let's make more of a mess.
Yeah. Americans haven't voted out a president in office without a third-party candidate screwing things up since Carter.
We'll come back with the remainder of the video here allegedly from ISIS. you got to hand it to them. They're making some good points here. More on the way. 8:55.
Oh yeah.
450 free. This is Free Talk Live. We're talking about the ISIS propaganda videos, a series called Lend Me Your Ears, hosted by one of their alleged prisoners, John Cantley, from the UK, former photojournalist. He hasn't been doing much photojournalism because he's been in custody since 2012 when he was allegedly abducted. Now he is the host of a series of videos, which we don't know how long the series will last for. And we also don't know whether or not his services will spare him from having his head cut off in the final video. Because
compensation may well be a brutal beheading video.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a horror. Of course, these beheading videos are horrible, and that's a whole other topic of discussion. But this is interesting because it's the other side of the story. It's not hard to get the U.S. government's perspective on ISIS.
It's hard not to.
Yeah, I mean, the mainstream media is putting that out there all over the place. These videos, however, are relatively difficult to come by. Last night, and it's actually interesting watching this this version. It's being hosted by the Clarion Project, which doesn't seem to be. I don't know. I don't know much about them, but they say as addressing Islamic extremism is their tagline. That's all I know about them. They are the ones who put this up on their YouTube channel. And unlike the one that we played last night, the pictures in this one are not being blurred out. The initial video of propaganda, the only versions I could find online had all the photos that were used in the video to illustrate. They were blurred out. This one, that's not happening with. I suspect that it's because if they don't blur the videos, that YouTube can take down the videos because of copyright violations. So I was never able to. I looked and looked and looked. I could not find the original unblurred version of the audio that we played for you last night. So these are very difficult videos to find the actual original versions of. In this case, this one does seem to be the uncut original version, and we're going to continue with John Cantley here in a moment.
Is the Islamic State like making intellectual property complaints to YouTube?
No.
You better take that video down or we'll cut your mother's head off.
No, just to be clear, what's happening is ISIS allegedly is releasing these videos to the internet. We don't know by what channel they're being released, because it'd be nice if ISIS just had a YouTube channel that we could just subscribe to get all of these things. I only find out about them when I see mainstream media articles about them existing. Then I have to go and search and search and search and try to find the actual video. So what's happening is with the prior video that we played last night on the show, Chris, all of the versions had been blurred out, and they weren't going to be. They didn't release that originally like that. Why would they blur out the photos that they were using in their own video to illustrate? So what was happening was the people who were putting the video online, who were not ISIS, just the people, just random people uploading it to their YouTube channel, somebody blurred that out so they wouldn't get copyright strikes on their channel.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Okay.
So it wasn't ISIS that was blurring their own video. Mark, we'll continue that here in a moment. So we'll continue here with the video from ISIS. This is their most recent video, just released a couple days ago, where John Cantley, their spokesman, their forced spokesman ostensibly, is delivering a prepared statement into a video camera. And this one, he's kind of breaking down Barack Obama and what the supposed plan is as far as how to stop ISIS with bombs, and then apparently not just bombs, because Barack Obama had pointed out that, we're not going to use a single American ground troop. Well, they're going to be using other ground troops, and in this case, they're going to be using, what was it, the Free Syrian Army, I believe is what they called themselves. Yep. And
the moderate rebels who are violently overthrowing their government.
And ISIS alleges, or the people claiming to be ISIS in this video allege, that the Free Syrian Army is a bunch of scumbags who are going to be selling the millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment that they'll be receiving from the U.S. federal government to ISIS, ultimately.
Well,
that's what they alleged.
Yeah, and it's totally plausible because that's how things go.
Kind of how these things generally tend to wind up.
So let's continue with the video here.
Which goes a long way in explaining the simplistic language used in his last speech. Obama was at pains to point out that groups of killers have the capacity to do great harm. That was the case before 9/11 and remains today. If this reality wasn't changed by 2 arrogant wars before, why will a third change it now? Obama described the Islamic State as not Islamic. No religion condones the killing of innocents, and the vast majority of their victims have been Muslim. The Islamic State has no vision other than the slaughter of all who stand in its way. Now, if by innocents he means women and children, then the Islamic State did not kill the Christian and Yazidi women and children of Mosul and Sinjar. This is an undeniable fact. And they do not regard the Shia as Muslims at all. In fact, according to them, the Shia are considered worse than Americans.
Wait a second. Did he claim that they did or did not? Something was an undeniable fact that they did or did
not kill Christian women and children.
Okay. Because I mean, I'd heard you heard these news stories. I wasn't sure the pictures were shown to be old. Like it was just a bunch of a big mess around that whole beheading of innocents thing.
Is they are apostates claiming to be Muslims while worshipping the dead. And the Islamic State does have a vision. They've created an autonomous and functioning caliphate. But expanding on the complex social and political issues of the region isn't going to work when it's war you want. And so the speech was full of hyperbole about how America was saving innocent men, women, and children. This is American leadership at its best, said Obama. We stand with people who fight for their own freedom, he said, before the speech descended into prideful chest-beating about how the USA always saves the world single-handedly. It was all disappointingly predictable. America is good, the Islamic State is bad, and they will be defeated using aircraft and a motley collection of fighters on the ground. For their part, the Islamic State say they welcome meeting Obama's under-construction army. Join me again for the next program.
Yes, and I imagine that we will, because I find this all very interesting.
Yeah. So you said you didn't see Obama's speech?
Did not. Did you?
I did. I picked it up on YouTube.
I try to
later
avoid
on
politicians.
that evening or the next day. But it was. I think it gives a pretty accurate description of what Obama's speech was.
Predictable.
It's just very like, hey, look, we're going to go kill a bunch of people, and I have the power to do this, and I don't even need to ask Congress. And maybe I'll ask Congress if I can give hundreds of millions of dollars of weapons to violent radical forces in the Middle East and see if that pans out real well.
Because it's worked so well in the past.
Right. I mean, it seems to me that this is just so predictable, right? I mean, they armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan when the Russians invaded, and that spun off into Al-Qaeda, and then Al-Qaeda goes and allegedly bombs a few buildings here in the United States, and then they launch wars on two different countries, and the outcome of this is ISIS. And so you go and you start messing around with this hornet's nest, and you can just imagine what's going to follow that, because ISIS
it isn't going to be good.
The ISIS situation, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, I'm certainly not in favor of any like U.S. military action against this group of people, but it certainly doesn't look like these are good folks, right? These are some really dangerous people, and there's a lot of them, and they are well armed, and they're taking over vast swaths of territory, and this is something that we're just going to make worse in some way, and I'm terrified by it.
Yeah, and that's a great point, that the continued escalation of violence just attracts the more violent. There's more coming up. We've been sharing with you the audio track of the most recent ISIS video, and they're coming out about once a week at this point, so expect a new one.
Maybe they're not an army, but really just a video production company.
Well, they certainly seem to have a proficient video production wing. The quality is decent. It's HD that they're putting out, and John Cantley, their host, who's also a prisoner, is watchable.
I hope that someday some garbage podcast can be as good as ISIS.
Oh, God.
22,000 views so far on this particular video. So they're, and again, this isn't even hosted by any kind of ISIS channel, which is my big complaint is, hey, guys, come on. Get with the program here. We're in the new 21st century. Everybody's got their own YouTube channel. Why doesn't ISIS have an official channel? Why do I have to find out about the ISIS videos just by happening to see some sort of news story about it in my news feed somewhere? I'm actually concerned that I'll miss one of these things because I just happen across them.
I'm going to go ahead and guess that YouTube would be taking down any official ISIS channel. I know that
that's unfortunate.
Even Twitter was pulling anything linking to like beheading videos. The most recent beheading video, Twitter was pulling stuff down, and Twitter used to like never censor anything. I mean, you've had situations where like child pornography has been like trending on Twitter.
Even LiveLeak would not allow the beheading videos.
Yeah,
which was a surprise to me. In fact, LiveLeak put out LiveLeak. For those that don't know, LiveLeak is this alternative to YouTube that is sort of known for having more, let's say, violent or gory videos, the stuff that generally wouldn't be allowed on YouTube. LiveLeak has sort of made a name for itself as being the location where you can go for that stuff. And then when I was, again, searching for these beheading videos, because they're so hard to find them, then I went, of course, to LiveLeak, and they had a statement up there saying, this is the first time we've ever not put something up like this. And they gave their reasons for it. They're basically, to summarize, was they didn't want to give ISIS any extra publicity.
I guess they should start uploading the videos to funnyordie.com or something.
See, I think it's interesting the whole choice to put something put something up or not put something up. Because the United States is killing people in the Middle East with bombs.
Yes.
There have been 250 last I heard Tomahawk missiles lobbed into these areas, and those kill people. They may or may not have their heads when the bombs go off, but for some reason, executions via beheading is this terrible thing to people in the West or something. Mm-hmm. And, like the responsibility, are we showing pictures? Are there videos coming out of dead people that have been killed by U.S. bombs? Yes, there are. Why are they putting those up? Does that increase is that a good thing for the U.S.? It sounds like a bad thing for the U.S.
It seems to me that there are exceedingly few of those videos out there, though, because for all the bombs that the United States drops in, how many different war zones that it's currently involved in, I don't see a great number of those videos. Now, I'm sure that there's not a whole lot of incentive to be the cameraman at one of those sites.
Well, right. It's hard to get shots of that if you think about it. Most of the videos we've seen over the years of American troops wreaking havoc have been leaked, like the WikiLeaks kind of videos, which usually you'll see them from the troops' helicopter or whatever that is hovering there, and you'll see in sort of I don't know if it's like night vision, but it looks like it's
it's forward-looking infrared.
There you go, FLIR. So you don't really see great detail of what's happening. You can see that there are humans on the ground and that there's gunshots or whatever coming in and they're being taken out or explosions, but it's not as gory. It doesn't seem as personal as a beheading video does, right?
Yeah,
like
it all just looks like a video game or something. And
unfortunately, yeah. And of course, that's one of the reasons why the U.S. military is able to recruit new people, because they're able to get people to just control drones and things like that, and they don't, they're disconnected from the actual killing that is being done. Now, when you look at a beheading video, you have an individual who is sitting there. In the case of the ISIS videos, they're kneeling on the ground and they're being talked about and they're speaking, and then they're allegedly, ostensibly beheaded. It's much more personal when that happens, and so it's not a surprise that a video like that would be more upsetting to people.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the whole point of the videos. It's supposed to, give people a reaction that's negative, right? They're supposed to see the video and say, hey, this is terrible. I don't want to see this. Whatever is causing this to happen, I want it to stop. Right, so they're putting out those videos with that, intention, and the people who want this to continue are incentivized at all costs to make sure that people don't see that.
You'd want, I'd love to. I don't want to say I'd love to see bombing videos. I prefer not to ever see something like that. But
if they're going to happen, I'd love to see the videos of it.
To actually get a video of, like a little girl running through the streets when a bomb goes off, and to see the damage and the horrifying destruction that causes is next to impossible, because the camera itself would have to survive the explosion, and so you're never going to see that. You can see a fictionalized version of it in some Hollywood movie, because then it's all CGI and the camera's not really there, not really subject to being blown up. But in reality, that's what's happening. Innocent human beings are having their limbs torn from their bodies,
blown
and
to pieces,
horrible bits and giblets and chunks everywhere, and you can't see that happen except from a disconnected perspective from some helicopter or some jet flying over. And so we'll never see, or very unlikely to ever see, footage like that. We'll never see the real results in real time of what happens with these bombings beyond from a distance. So
But I
it's
mean,
much
I
more
wonder if,
impersonal.
here in the United States, I mean, there's some statistic, and I can't recall what it is, but you're on camera, X percentage of your entire life. I mean, there's never any like an ATM camera or a security camera across the street that catches one of these bombings or something like that. I've got to imagine that this footage has to exist somewhere, and people are just, for whatever reason, either not uploading it or it's getting taken down by YouTube censors and that sort of thing.
The only pictures I ever see are these bombed out places that you couldn't put an ATM or anything else
Yeah,
like
you
that.
see the remnants. You can see pictures of what it looks like in the aftermath, and I'm sure there's plenty of blood splatter that you could take photos of. But the actual bombing itself would be very difficult to accomplish a capture on video,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it's not easy.
So share your thoughts with us here. Toll free, 855-450-FREE. Because why wouldn't a group like ISIS, who obviously wants to curry favor with people, I mean, to some extent, they have these propaganda videos they're coming out with. Why wouldn't they distribute a video like that? Why wouldn't they, if those videos did exist?
If anyone from ISIS is listening, please try to get this footage. I don't know how many ISIS members listen to Free Talk Live, but if you are listening, we want videos of the carnage that the United States is causing, because we know all too well about the damage that you're doing.
Right. And by the way, just one of the points on this video here, and then we'll talk about the Syrian bombings, the Syrian continuing the discussion of airstrikes. Apparently now they've lifted whatever restrictions were on the Syrian airstrikes, so now they're going to be killing more innocent people there. But one of the last points made by John Cantley in this video is he's pointing out that the U.S. government's perspective on this, their public statement is essentially that U.S. government good, the ISIS bad, or the Islamic State bad. And it's my opinion that all states are bad. So I'm not saying the Islamic State are the good guys here. Just because we're playing their propaganda videos doesn't mean I'm on their side. But all states are bad. The United States, bad. Islamic State, bad. Anybody who wants to control other human beings and is willing to kill and harm just to try to achieve their goals.
The lie we've been told all our lives is that we are the government. And if that is the case, then we need to have the information, as much information as we can get about making decisions when it comes around foreign policy. And if the United States is going to become involved in yet another protracted, costly, deadly war in the Middle East, the people that are going to be making decisions in 2014 and 2016 need to know. They need to know, because what I see is the war party and the more war party. I don't see a difference. As far as I'm concerned, the Democrats, they act like they fight and they want to kill and destroy. They just act like they don't like it.
I do think that if you had, a John McCain as president or something like that right now, I mean, you'd have a full-on ground invasion over there. I definitely call the Republican Party the more war party.
That's how I see it.
Fair enough.
Here in New Hampshire, the Republicans voted to demilitarize the police. So I don't think that that's every Republican everywhere. But
at the national level, yeah.
At the national level, when you give Republicans armies, I don't trust them.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.